open the meeting and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Open the agenda with, we have an acceptance of the Upton Fire and EMS donation.
That's the magic seat.
That's the magic for you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chief Marchand of the Upton Fire and EMS Department, and this is the Association President, Firefighter EMT, David O'Ryan.
Correct.
So tonight's thing is asking the town to accept the donation of where you guys saw the other night. We had you up the station Monday night. Took some nice pictures of it, of couple pieces of equipment, in addition to upgrade our department's UTV. The town recently, in the past a little over a year, has purchased through a grant, a public safety grant, which I covered before, an off-road UTV to give us greater capabilities for rescues and firefighting. What we found was the department, both the police department and the fire department, both had ATVs. And we found with the increased use of the outdoor activities with people and our vastly growing open space lands in town, we've had an increase of calls where we've had to go in and get people that have, fallen or injured or various different things. And we didn't have a really good way. The ATVs are too small to carry a stretcher or they can carry light equipment and a person in, but they're not good for carrying people out. So at the distances we had and in the terrain stuff that we ran into, the rescues we had, we figured out we were either calling for one and waiting for one to get there. So we got one through a grant. We also got a trailer that we were able to purchase. And we also equipped it with, through the grant and some creative financing. Yeah, we found the money to buy the slide-in unit in the back that gives us the patient transport capability and firefighter capability. What we quickly found out was the ATV was excellent, had good off-road capability, but it was like way too fast. And to try to reduce that, but the biggest thing is we noticed that we were losing off-road capabilities, but it's great if you're cruising down bike trails or like the park road at the state forest. But when you get off-road power lines, some of the places we're going, we needed additional off-road capability. So we quickly started looking into the track systems. We investigated a couple of different track systems that were available. Chose to go with the Camso track system for it. The association, we presented the cost of the association, and between that and some additional upgrades that we did with brush guards and to protect the machine, we spent just a little bit under $10,000 with the association. So our members installed it, and it's really made a big difference on the platform for being more stable, better traction. It just greatly increased the capabilities of it. So tonight we're asking you guys to accept that donation, to be here representing the association. Want to speak about the association?
Well, I mean, I can go ahead.
Yeah.
So with the fire association, obviously it's imperative that we take care of the local community as well as the fire department. So we've been very fortunate through our annual mailers and doing our monthly can and bottle drive through the residents in town that we've been able to assist with donations to the department when there's a need. much like with the UTV, the Camso tracks, and the accessories in which were installed, we found that it was imperative that we came up with the funding and made the donation. We were happy to do it. Obviously, it comes with hard work, dedication amongst all the members of our association, as well as all the townspeople who assist with our fundraisers and all the town events. So it's a continued effort that in the future, we'd like to continue to do fundraising and assist our community and the fire department as we can.
Did a bad job of me. I could. Along with that, we also, just to give you an idea, is we're also right now in the middle of doing some training with the vehicle. We did a bunch of checking around. There's all different ones. We decided to go with, it's called Rover, or it's a Recreational Off-Highway Association, Vehicle Association Training Program. There's an online portion and a field practical program. It's going to be tactically impossible for us to do the field thing because the amount of people we have to get to do through. But we're lucky enough to have access to an instructor that's going to help us do the field part. So right now, all of our people are doing all of our members do an online 2-hour online course. And then we're going to do the field portion of it with the track vehicle and the ATV. We've already had a basic course for the ATV years ago when we got that, but this is more for the UTV itself.
Very good. Any questions?
No, awesome, really good stuff.
No questions, but I think it's admirable, and I think that residents should know that a place to drop cans and bottles, that's an awful lot of cans and bottles. And I know you do your mailers as well, and it comes right back to the town, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for all the hard work you do.
Thank you.
I'll take a motion.
Move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law 44, Section 53A, to accept a donation of $8,500 for a new track system and accessories for enhancements, including approximately $1,500 in voluntary labor for the installation for the Upton Fire and EMS Department's UTV and the Upton Fire and EMS Association.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous action. Next, we have a designation of surplus equipment, Fire Chief, or you're gonna give us a little.
Yes, so Town of Upton Association a number of years ago purchased a vehicle stabilization. It's called Rescue Jacks system to stabilize cars that are like on their side, in different positions and stuff like that. And it's an older type of system. It's a good system. It's a little heavier. And then when we purchased our new rescue engine, we wanted to get something a little bit different. So we decided to buy a system called the Paratech rescue system, which is a vehicle stabilization system, but it's also the same system that's adaptable to our district team, our tech team. So if, God forbid, we had a large incident or we had a person in a ditch that collapsed, ditch or a building or whatever, our system is totally compatible with their system. So again, between the association and the department, we're able to pool our funds together and buy that system. So the other system is a totally different type of system. It doesn't adapt well to it. We didn't want to have two systems. So the system's sitting there, rather see us putting it out for auction or anything like that. I put it out to the fire district to keep it within our district. Hey, first one calls, that's interested in it, and right away, one of our sister towns, right away called right away, that they didn't have, well, they had part of one, that they would complete their setup. So, I had like 10 towns, surprisingly, some of the towns that called. Which kind of makes us proud because, like I'm saying, geez, they don't have this stuff. But so if it's declared surplus, I have a town will take it tomorrow, and they're very close by. That good chance are they will probably end up using them someday, or vice versa. So,
Thank you.
No,
That's, take a motion.
I move that the select board vote to declare the Upton Fire and EMS Department Rescue Jack System as surplus equipment for the purpose of offering the equipment to a department within the fire district.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous action.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. for all
Thank you
your
both very much. Really great stuff.
Next on the agenda, we have the FY 2024 snow and ice budget update. Mr. Westgate. His speaker is off. Oh, there we go.
I'm a little slow tonight. I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, it's that time of year again. Right around this time each year, we take a look at, we do a recap of our snow and ice events so far for the winter and cross our fingers that winter is just about done. I sent the board and the town manager a memo last week outlining all of the events that we've had, as well as the financial status of our snow and ice account. So if it pleases the board, I'll simply touch upon the highlights of the memo. We've had 9 events as of the time I wrote the memo. We've had 1 since then, but it was a small light snow event that was just required treating of the roads. Our first event started November 22nd, and the last one we had before this one we just treated the roads was February 13th. We received a total of 19 3/4 inches of snow. Most of our storms, as typical for New England, are heavy wet snow or sleet and freezing rain. And as the board knows, the sleet and freezing rain are more problematic for our equipment and our staff, as well as our resources. So as a recap of the finances, we have spent approximately $180,000 of our $260,000 appropriation. And that equates to the following. We spent roughly $71,015 on salt, $41,632 on just DPW labor, $38,105 on hired contractors, and $29,248 on snow and ice miscellaneous products such as fuel for the equipment, repairs to the equipment, snow blades, calcium chloride, pelletized calcium, and things of that nature. So as we look at the snow and ice budget tonight, we have roughly about $80,000 left, and hopefully winter is just about done with us. Our salt shed is about 3/4 full, and this is the time of year we start holding back on keeping that shed full, in hopes that we end up staying in the black and we don't require any additional funds at the annual. And that is my update.
Thank you very much. Hopefully, we don't get any more snow or ice. Thank you. Any questions?
No,
No, it's great news.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dennis.
thank you.
And next, we have the execution of the primary election ballot. This isn't here. Right?
I know that she was jumping on.
She's not there though, right?
You need her?
It is pretty straightforward.
Yes,
Okay.
we need to do it.
We need to do it.
Yes.
That's
I'll take a motion then.
I move that the board vote to execute the warrant for the March 5th, 2024 state primary election.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous action. And then we have a request for use of Ristine funds for Kids at Play and Leader in Training Financial Assistance Fund Recreation Director. Do we have anybody from?
So I'm going to speak to this just because something came up that has the recreation director away. So last year, the board, well, this came up before you joined up, of course. But the board approved an initial request from Recreation and ESS to fund essentially an assistance program for people to participate with Kids at Play as well as counselors in training. It took a little bit of extra work to get it off the ground. So that's why when you look at the material that was submitted in the packet, they had only provided assistance totaling about dollars. Now that we have the processes all ironed out, the recreation director is once again coming forward to get assistance for $10,000. The reason why it's 10,000 is that the previous request was only for that season, not something that carried over. So whatever was not used, that went back to the Racine. This is now essentially a new request for this season, rather than something that then is sort of funding. And as we go through this year, we'll be able to identify based on utilization, is it something that want to sort of have something that can roll over from year to year, so we don't have requests, but then, sort of fund it as an account goes down. So last year was the trial. This year, now that they have things in place, coming forward with another request to hopefully provide assistance for families this year.
Motion.
I just have a question. So I see that, what is the connection to the Elder and Social Services? Just that they sort of review the applications for the
It was
kids that
working
play
with-
financial assistance?
Right, so
Okay.
because of our Elder and Social Services relationship, looking at meal programs and all these things, looking at income base that our recreation department doesn't have that service. It basically is something both departments are working together to.
Got it. So Maria sort of lets families know that it's an option, and if they want to apply for it, they apply for it.
Right, utilize.
ESS, and they say, okay, they approve it, and then they
Exactly.
provide the funds. Okay. And this is just for Upton residents?
Correct.
That's it. Thank you.
I'll take a motion.
I move that the select board vote to approve the request submitted by the recreation director and elder and social services director for $10,000 from the Racine Fund to fund the financial assistance program for 2024.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous action. Town managers report.
Okay, so wanted to give the board and town update on a couple of projects. First of all, just want to make sure that everyone noticed on the agenda, as well as all the material you have, using the term select board. Literally, it was the day after our last meeting, we got approval from the AG's office that all the town meeting articles from special town meeting were approved. So with posting of that approval, we're now in the process of updating regulations, policies, website to reflect that change. And also I will start working with Representative Meridian's office to make the home rule petition legislation change so that we can get it approved by the legislator to amend the special acts that reference Board of Selectmen. We have engaged signed the contract for reconstruction of Fisk Ave. So the engineers are going to start doing that work, and that will allow for the final design and then bidding out for the reconstruction of Fisk Ave. Grove Street Bridge, Dennis, as well as the engineers, have been in front of conservation, and hopefully we'll get things wrapped up on the 28th to finalize permitting with the Conservation Commission for the Grove Street Bridge. This is the same as the Milford Water and Sewer Extension Project. Police Department was successful in getting a grant for purchasing defibrillators. And also we were successful in getting a cybersecurity grant for implementing annual phishing and cybersecurity trainings for town employees. And this is across all the town: fire, police, town hall, DPW. Recreation has been busy last week, this week, and next week, interviewing for some of their employees associated with Kids at Play. And last week, GovHR presented an initial draft of the classification compensation plan. Another meeting is scheduled beginning of March to discuss compensation goals. And once we come out of that meeting, we'll be scheduling a meeting with the Board of Selectmen to present that so we can finalize things. And when I say compensation goals, when you pull together a compensation plan, you're sort of shooting for, out of your peer communities, what is your strategy? Are you looking to be above average, average, below? Where do you fit? So the personnel board is having continued discussion this impacts, employee retention, but also there's a financial impact as well. So that's why we're gonna need to schedule meetings with the board of selectmen once they work on that. Planning. With Michael, we're finalizing the expression of interest for the reuse redevelopment of Holy Angels. That expression of interest will be published on Monday. Also executed a contract with Central Mass Regional Planning for the development of the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan. This is funding that was approved back at special town meeting. And also I'm working to finalize the request for bids for demolition services for 25 Hartford Ave North. Been working with town council on that as well. The Conservation Commission back late summer, you may recall getting some emails from butters on various pedestrian and right-of-way issues around Dogwood. Conservation has continued to meet on those and is working on amending some of the easements that are within that development to get pedestrian trails off of certain sections impacting private property and onto areas that may be a little bit more conducive. So conservation along with trails is continuing to do that work and recently authorized them reviewing with town council some of the language for revising some of the easement locations. I'll be attending next week's historical commission meeting. They're scheduled to talk about various preservation improvements associated with Holy Angels. They, following up on special town meetings, vote to approve painting for Holy Angels. They would like to have the paint chips analyzed to determine what color scheme was in the past as far as historical color selection. When we look at the photos downstairs, it's clear it wasn't white. So they're interested in maybe if we are painting the building, maybe bringing back to some sort of historical color scheme. I've also been talking with them about coming up with estimating costs for replacing the storm windows. Those plexiglass windows are in various conditions of deterioration or if they're broken. And they actually have inquired what the process would be to have electricity go to that building to install backlights behind the stained glass. So we're going to be looking at that and talking to our insurance provider because right now there are no utilities that go to that. And our previous guest, the fire department, may want to chime in as well. And then lastly, tomorrow night is the continued public hearing for the Upton Apartments 40B, 47 Main Street. Topics will be traffic and civil engineering, and that will be at the Upton Community Center in the Great.
Time is that 7?
Start 6:30.
6:30? Okay, thank you. This is the part of the public session where we have people that have some comments to make, can address them for 10 minutes, and speakers would be limited to 2 minutes. Anyone available for that? Seeing none. We have an appointment on Council on Aging. Is Suzanne Perry here? Oh, there you are.
The magic seat.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Suzanne Perry, but you can call me Sue, and I am applying for a position on the Council of Aging. What else do I say? I've been in the town for 30 years. I have a lot of experience in HR, retail management, bookkeeping. I spent a lot of time at the senior center at Millhouse. I spent a lot of time at the community center dealing with the seniors in town, and I feel it would be a privilege to help them out.
This is the elected position?
No, that would That would be the housing authority. This is all appointed by the board of selectmen.
Okay.
We unfortunately have had a rough 2024, as the board is aware. Some of the members that had passed away from our community were actually on the COA, and that's where Suzanne is applying for one of those vacancies due to a member passing.
Okay, any questions?
I do know Sue personally, and I think she'd be excellent.
Appreciate the volunteering. It's great.
I'll take a motion.
I move that the select board vote to appoint Suzanne Perry as a member of the Council on Aging for the remainder of the one-year term to expire June 30, 2024.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous action. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, next on the agenda, to reopen the annual town meeting warrant and possible insertion of articles. Give us an update on that.
Sure thing. So first, and we do have Michael Antonellis here as well, Director of Land Use and Inspection Services, and providing staff support for the planning board. So the town meeting warrant closed back on January 26th, following our typical schedule. And there's 3 items that are on the agenda under this. First is a personal wireless that Michael can speak to. And the second is we do have Anthony Steele, principal with BVT, who is here on behalf of BVT asking for 2 other articles to be placed on the warrant. The board does have, under Mass General Law, the ability to reopen the warrant to allow for articles to be inserted and then can close it either giving time or immediately upon inserting articles onto the warrant. You typically can do that until, the warrant is executed, but very often because there's public processes as far as finance committee holding meetings and all that, it can get a little challenging. But since we're right at the beginning of that process, this doesn't have a significant impact, at least from my view.
That's finance stuff, right?
As far as getting public comment, holding meetings to get public engaged prior to the execution of the warrant.
Any questions?
I don't have any.
Do we want to reopen the warrant for the Thursday, May 2nd, 2024 annual town meeting and insert the 1 through 3 articles?
I think, do we have some questions on the 2nd and 3rd article? I'm fine with the first one. I'm familiar with that. The stabilization fund for BVT and the debt authorization for BVT. I want just sort of an overview of what's happening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Thank you for having me tonight. Anthony Steele, Assistant Superintendent Principal over at BVT. So I understand no questions on the first one regarding stabilization.
No, sorry,
No, there-
if that's something that the school is proposing, which it is, then yeah, I would like to just get your take on it.
Sure, absolutely. So BVT has never established a stabilization account. It was the recommendation not only of our treasurer, but we also learned fairly common practice among regional schools. So what we have been doing over the years is self-funding most of our capital improvement projects. That is typically done with whatever we have in excess and deficiency. However, there's no ability to carry over past a year in that. What we're finding is that many of the projects that we're doing, we don't have the capacity to tackle them. For example, in the past, we were able to self-fund 4 phases of our project. We also, as you mentioned and can see, we're looking for a bond this year to do 60,000 square feet of roof in our HVAC units. They're just well beyond our ability to self-fund.
Within a year, yeah.
Yeah. And then, we have also a long list of identified projects that will be coming up in the coming years. And we've always tried to do those self-funding those without bonding. And so this would allow us the ability to do that.
Now, these would have to be voted by all 13 towns and unanimously,
I believe it's 2/3.
2/3?
Correct.
And that would be on the next one also on the 10 million.
It would be, right, correct, saying, we're also not seeking any fiscal appropriation from the towns for the stabilization account. We would be using our alumni donations, our industry partner donations, and then of course, potentially some excess and deficiency to build that account to address capital projects, but not seeking now or in the future allocations for that account.
No.
And then that authorization, I don't have any more questions on that one, so thank you. That's something that, it's a stabilization account held by the school at the school for district purposes, so that's great.
Right.
Question, does the MURSD have a stabilization account? Capital
That's a
stabilization
good
account?
question.
Sure.
I'll start.
Okay, just curious. Okay, so I don't have any other questions on that one.
I have a question on number 3. We won't know the $10 million debt, so that needs to be voted by all 13 towns. And we won't know what Upton's share is until,
Actually, I think I can share some insight on that. We started a year ago by announcing to finance committees, town managers and so forth that we were going to be seeking this year. This is specifically for 2 items. One, a 60,000 square foot section of roof that is now 34 years old. We've done 2 infrared studies on it, wet and wetter. So, time to replace it. And the other is that we're experiencing multiple HVAC units failing as they're coming to end. And so to address those 2 items, those are not all of our capital items by any means, but those are the 2 that we feel are absolutely essential and to address at this time. Both are MSBA eligible, so we can start there. We're hoping that we see up to 50% reimbursement through MSBA. MSBA had closed their emergency projects for quite some time, and they reopened it last year, and it's open until, I believe, March. And so we have our SLI statement of interest prepared to go in. It was just authorized and voted by our board last Thursday. I think Joe was present for that. So we should be able to effectively get on the MSBA for emergency repair and thus be eligible for the reimbursement. Whatever we get for the reimbursement goes right back to the principal of the bond. So hopefully we're talking more like 5 million, not 10 million, when we realize the reimbursement that we'll be eligible for. The other aspect of it is that we base the 10 million on estimates. And if we come in lower with those estimates, then we would also only borrow what we're required to complete the projects. That being said, we're hoping that the actual number that is bonded is far lower than the 10 million. 10 million is more of a, I guess you could say, worst case scenario if we didn't get benefit from those other options. Joe, did Doc share with you about the amortization or anything like that? So we would be looking for a 20-year bond. The share or percent ownership for a town is based on the 3-year average. So it would be the Upton's enrollment in 23, 24, and 25. And it's an average of that. That average for Upton, I believe, is 7.2%. So it would be 7.2% of the 10 million. The other thing that is important to note is that the $36 million bond that was taken 20 years ago is maturing. This is the last payment this year. And I believe your last payment is $13,158. This bond would not take effect until 26. And so you would basically, your current payment would be dropping off for debt. and this would be coming on in 26. So we're hoping for a nice, smooth as possible of a transition there. In that said worst case scenario, looking for the potential, the possible number there, I believe it was 54,000 and change. And that's again, with no, that's not including any reimbursements or if we get more favorable bids on the projects.
Do you have a timeline on when SBAB would either condone the reimbursement or not?
Sure. Typically, I would say they're about a 6-month process normally. I'm not going to assume things are normal in Boston at the moment.
Nothing's normal.
But usually, it also depends on how long the list is. I think there's a bit of a mad dash because a lot of schools are obviously trying to get in before they close the door and on the reimbursable projects. So
Is this going to be a first come, first serve?
no, I believe if you're in, you're in.
Okay, and any other questions?
So if this is the first time sort of I'm going through this process with you all, so I appreciate the patience here as I asked to be walked through it a little bit.
Sure.
So you borrow $10 million. Our portion is $720,000. That's about $54,000 for 20 years. We're currently paying some amount every year on a prior borrow. Do you know the amount we currently pay?
Well, it is actually coming downhill because the interest you just.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't level. It wasn't a.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So that replacement isn't necessarily like, oh, we're not gonna have $54,000 this year. We're gonna just roll it in next year. It'll be an increase from what we're paying now.
And the last payment on the capital is that 13,100 and change that
Got it.
Mr. Steele had mentioned. That's budgeted within our FY 25 town manager budget recommendation.
Yeah.
But that's the last year of that. So this
Got it.
would basically fall to FY 26, any payment on 10 million.
Right.
The authorization is basically with MSBA. You also have to demonstrate that you have approval for the project funding mechanism, but like for our own authorization, that doesn't mean that'll be the final bill that the towns end up paying.
Right.
Especially if they get funding through MSBA.
Right. I
And
gotcha.
there's some of that detail we'll still have to work out in the
Yeah.
next number of months.
So that would basically sort of be a net of a $40,000 a year increase in what we're paying now for if we assume $13,000 is what we're paying now, it goes to $54,000. So that's fine. That $54,000, is that decreasing payments over 20 years or is that a flat payment?
First, I would say 54,000 would be worst case scenario. That's.
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
And it's come in high.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we don't even get there.
Totally. We're just ballparking
But
here.
if otherwise, the payments, I believe are fixed principal payments. And
Yeah.
the interest slowly over time decreases.
Okay, so that 54,000 would
That's
is year one, and over time that would decrease the same way that the prior one did.
Correct.
Got it.
So it would be BVT's gonna borrow that in FY 25 or FY 26?
It's my understanding that the process gets started now. However, payments would not begin until FY 26.
So we would borrow the whole 10 million?
No, I believe it comes in stages.
So you're gonna phase it?
Correct. And that's why I'm saying I hope
The
that
reimbursements
costs,
come in.
if the costs aren't there, then we don't need to even borrow it in the first place. So the authorization is up to the 10 million. We're hoping to stay as far into that as possible.
Got it. So,
If I may, and the amortization is like a mortgage. The first year you pay your mortgage, you pay almost nothing in principal. It's almost all interest. And then it drops considerably by the last year. By the last year, it flips and it's almost all principal and very little interest.
Correct.
But the payment doesn't decrease. Payment's the same.
Yeah,
For
more,
the
'cause they
20
don't.
years unless you do.
But these ones will.
These will, because that's what the last one did.
Then it was.
And,
11 months.
So you'll do the work regardless of whether or not you get the MSBA grant.
Correct.
And if you get the grant, you'll know in time before you do the borrowing, is that right? So it's not as though you're going,
So the way the MSBA works is that first you have to outlay
Yeah.
the money, have
Yeah.
the work done, and then they're reimbursing you.
They reimburse
in
back.
Stages or phases as the work continues.
does that money come back to the town? Like, how would that affect the town? Like, we're approving our portion of a $10 million borrow.
Let's assume that the money does get borrowed.
Yeah.
It's not. So we do borrow the money, then
Yeah.
it gets paid towards the principal.
Yeah,
And knocks the principal down, effectively shortening the duration of the.
got it. So it's not as though got it. It would just, we'd basically be paying it off faster.
Correct.
Got it.
So
Okay.
each phase would be 20 years,
Each phase of the roof.
of the borrowing.
Oh, well, the last time we borrowed was 20 years ago. So I hope we make it another 20 without asking you for.
No, I mean, if you said you were gonna do it in phases.
So. You mentioned the phases, so we have a 300,000 square foot facility. We were able in the past to, in 4 separate phases, replace sections of our roof. We did it with excess and deficiency, so never
Right.
bonded, never asked for any assistance with that. We did it in-house. Those were all right around $1 million projects. A little bit of a dance to put
Yeah.
that kind of money and get the reimbursement back and so forth. This last section of roof, perhaps a sign of the times, but we're down to the last 60,000 square feet. And the estimate of it is over $5 million. So well beyond our reach to be able to self-fund. And that's both materials and labor and everything else that has, escalated quite a bit. So obviously this last phase is out of reach. We've been watching this roof now mostly for about 4 years. We know that it's wet and it's predictable for a roof that at that point, be about 30 years old, you'd expect that. We just did another one a year ago. As expected, it's more wet, insulation and so forth. We're hoping to address it before it's an emergency type situation with its, buckets and classroom desks and so forth. Trying to protect the investment.
Yeah.
To that attack and inside it. So, we tried to give as much notice as possible. Announcing this last year and also doing this, as thoughtfully as possible to minimize the impact to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the information.
All set?
Yeah, I'm good.
Michael, do you have any input on the zoning amendment?
Yeah, just briefly, I'll say, this was originally intended to be included with the initial request for articles in the warrant, but I just it neglected to make it onto my email to Joe with the 4 or 5 other articles. So entirely my mistake on that, but it was always intended to be on the warrant for you.
So can we have a motion?
I move that the board vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 39, subsection 10, to reopen the warrant for the Thursday, May 2nd, 2024 annual town meeting to insert the articles 1 through 3 of the annual town meeting warrant as may be amended by town council and to immediately close said warrant.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous action. Okay. All right, we have review of draft annual town meeting warrant and article meeting schedule.
So with the board wanted to just sort of talk about who we may want to schedule to come in to discuss with the board their articles. I included in the board's packet a timeline that basically the main thing that we probably want to be aware of is that essentially we're looking at finalizing articles end of March. The Finance Committee report, which includes the warrant, goes to the printer that it's expected around April 5th. So we're sort of then assembling everything that week. So really it's the week before that things should be locked down. We're providing the recommendations. So we have a little bit of time to invite in people to hear more about their articles. So thinking about the next meeting on March 5th, one to find out from the board, we have some easy things. I have the police chief, fire chief, and our DPW director. They both have capital items, so we can invite them in just to talk about those requests. We also have some articles that such as acquisition of land off Lake Wildwood as well as Mechanic. And we may want those committee representatives to come in to speak to those. And planning is going to hold a public hearing for their zoning articles. So I don't know if you want to invite anyone from planning to talk about those. Since they are zoning, they are required to hold public hearings on those. But we don't have, and we just had BBT to sort of talk about things. We don't have a lot. We don't have any petitions articles. We don't have a lot of committee reports except for those two. So thinking about lining this up, I'd like to try to consolidate things on the 5th and want to see what you thought we should invite in so we can start talking about it and start developing board of selectmen recommendations. And also if there's articles that aren't supported, the board has the authority not to include them on the warrant. I know this is a step that with the finance committee, they often look to see if there's articles that we're not going to be looking to have on the warrant, they'd like to know so that they don't have to waste energy sort of inviting those people in on the finance committee side.
So we do want to invite DPW Fire and Police.
Yep.
Are there any other capital items that we should also invite?
And they're all being, one of those three has them all. We
Okay.
don't have any other capital items that aren't.
See, yeah.
No. And for example, FISCAV would be handled by DPW anyways.
Yeah.
As well. So the only other ones ended up being if we wanted planning board to come in to talk to us about those or those land acquisitions.
When do you hold your public meetings?
I was just speaking with the chair of planning board today, Joe Hutter already introduced me, but Mike Antonellis, director of land use and inspection services. I spoke with the chair of planning board today and spoke about scheduling the public hearing for starting all of the public hearings for the bylaws of March 12th, I believe is the first meeting in March. So that we have time. They obviously the planning board's already looked over language initially, but this is the public hearing portion of it. And so that if there's any spillover questions, comments, things we need to address or the board wants to address, they have that second meeting in March to address them before we get to, I think it's April 2nd was when this board meets to finalize the.
That would be when I'd be having the final warrant for you to basically execute at that.
So, I mean, sometime after those public hearings, I'd have an indication as where we are on those. So but I say we, I mean the planning board, where the planning board is on those articles. But otherwise, I'd be happy to anytime, really. I can come by with a member of the planning board wants to accompany me to have a discussion about those articles. I'm happy to do that anytime.
Okay. That, everyone, fine. Okay, thank you.
Anytime it is.
Joe will say. Okay.
So I'll line up to, depending on availability, I think we should be able to probably hammer this out about an hour and a half on the 5th. if, depending on where we are, we also then would have a follow-up meeting on March 19th. Which actually for planning may not be bad because it would be after the public hearing.
Yeah.
You have public comments and there may be adjustments that need to be made as part of that.
Okay, that sounds good. Is that good?
Yep.
Very good.
It was easy. Nice work, team.
So easy.
Right.
Next, we have discussion of comments relating to the proposed 40B at 47 Main.
Yes. This was at my request. And I want to start by making the statement, I believe that all parties involved with this 40B project have been extremely professional. Government can be extremely frustrating for those not familiar with the process. I like to say government moves at a drunken snail's pace. And everyone has been patient and the process can be arduous. I'm not a fan of speculation, conjecture, rumor, innuendo, or whatever you want to call it, nor do I think it should usually be addressed. However, the reason I specifically asked for this issue to be addressed tonight is in a series of recent emails, a comment was made in writing I felt deserving of clarification. I felt it was important to clarify, as many comments are being requested, to be part of the public 40B record. The written comment was, and I quote, "Not understanding the selectmen's public objections because in a preliminary walk of the site, board members in attendance were like, when can you start?" I am the only member of this select board who attended that site walk. I did speak directly with Kevin Loberser during that visit. We were hiking through the site, chatting. Kevin spontaneously offered it was a previous town manager and a previous chair of this board who directed him to that Main Street location. What I need and want to make perfectly clear tonight is there was absolutely never any comment or intimation by myself, nor to my knowledge, anyone in attendance about when can you start. Questions were asked about location, locus, timelines, constructions, all points of clarification in regard to the project and the process. The sidewalk was a very professional sidewalk. And since I have the floor, I'll also add nomination papers are open for 14 positions in this year's elections. Nomination papers need to be returned by March 19. And if someone asks you to sign their nomination papers, please do. Signing the papers simply affords that person to get on the ballot. And you can sign as many nomination papers as you would like. Thank you.
Very good. Questions? Aisha? Yes.
I actually appreciate this because I have heard so many rumors about what went on in that meeting. And, you know, I know the people here have it in their hearts to embrace open and transparent government. And I'll tell you, this really concerned a lot of people. And when Mr. Loberser came and spoke at the community center to the residents, he talked about this. And again, he didn't want to mention any names. And it's sort of like, why is this a secret? Why aren't we open? Why aren't we transparent about this? I mean, if people are in a position where either they were hired to represent us in government, or they were elected, or they were appointed, why are they keeping information from residents? It does not feel good. It feels like something's being hidden. And it just want you to know, it's not a good feeling for those that, you know, that are citizens. So I hope that you embrace this. And if you can tell us, people, like who it was, because it was interesting. Mr. Loberser was the same thing, like, oh, I don't want to tell you who was there. And so like, why is this a secret? You know, what was done, what was said that was worth hiding. And along those same lines, the residents had a meeting with the select board some time ago. And at the end of the select board meeting, it was decided that the select board would have a meeting with Mr. Loberser separately, and they would be offered different locations and so forth. And I know it was done as a workshop or something, so there's really not much in the way of minutes. But when we talked to Mr. Lobershore at the community center, he said, well, what were you offered? What happened? He goes, nothing. And it's like, but they told us they're meeting and we're gonna do this, and now you're telling us nothing happened. And I don't know whether to believe him or we haven't heard anything back. So we don't know what to believe. And again, in the, just to keep it open and transparent, please just let people know what's going on, because it doesn't feel good.
I appreciate you bringing that up. And I mean, the workshop, the board and unanimously asked Mr. Loberser to meet with the residents. I mean, other properties might have been discussed
He said nothing was discussed.
at that meeting.
That's
There
why I'm
was,
concerned.
there was.
I would also disagree with his statement that nothing else was discussed.
Thank you.
We don't have the minutes on that workshop either.
No, we do.
They were,
I'll pull them because they were made available.
I did see minutes and they were pretty thin. It didn't really say much of anything. So that's why people again are asking, like, have you heard anything? What happened? And when you go, it makes people concerned.
We actually haven't voted on the minutes of the workshop.
I'll have to double check. But if we hadn't, then I'll make sure that we do on the next meeting. I mean, I think one of the things is that there's standards for meeting minutes, that, boards follow. Minutes are not intended on being transcripts, but the nature of the discussion, the summary of the discussion was prepared because, that is something that reflects the content of the discussion. And if the board may entertain, I just want to address a couple things in that email as well. Because.
What email?
Sorry, you have a copy there. This
Minutes,
was-
it's not an email, it's the minutes,
No, the
right?
emails that I was
That's why I'm
discussing.
asking.
So it's, here's a copy of the email that Laura was referring to. as far
Gotcha.
as-
Okay, before we get to that, I do have another comment or question, if I may. So, I would love to answer, like, we need to be transparent. There needs to be consistency, clarity. Like, I'm very, at least for me, I can't speak for my colleagues other than I'm sure that they're very happy and open to answer questions. Like, a lot of times what happens is conversations take on a life of their own, right? It's like the telephone game. And so by the time people are out having a conversation about a discussion the board had with Mr. Loberser or the board, but it was actually just Laura had on a site walk, by the time that gets to people's ears, it's different than what any of us experienced. So the best solution I can offer is my cell phone number, which I'll give it to everybody. Again, I do this all the time, 617-275-9916. And if you have questions about, like, we can answer any question if you have questions now, or
Absolutely. No,
like,
that's-
if there's a specific question, like what happened or who said what, or what does this mean? Or like, we'll answer any question anyone has at any time about any of this. So just text me, call me, let me know. I don't, who was where? That's the thing. She said there was one person at a site walk and it was her. I have never walked that property with Kevin Loberser. So if that's,
And neither have I.
so
Well, that was just, you don't address anything to whether, because you don't know who it was. It was this.
When I was at
Just
the
ask.
sidewalk, I was there from if I recall correctly, I was there from Board of Selectmen. Ted Briggs was there from Board of Health. Dennis was there, Michael was there.
I was gonna say Mass Housing,
Mass Housing.
they scheduled it, so they
Yes.
would have a list of all attendees.
That's true.
It sounded like this was before that.
At the comments, I felt compelled to answer. respond to tonight were put in writing. And most of these comments are being asked to be placed into the public record of 40B. And I felt, since I was the select board person there, and I was misquoted, and I didn't appreciate, and I'm a 5th generation townie, believe me. I am well tapped into the grapevine.
Oh.
Upton's grapevine is faster than the internet. I think we get it by osmosis. I'm not really sure. So I have heard all of the comments you have heard. And like I said, I don't dignify a lot of them. But once someone put something in writing that I felt was incorrect, especially since I was the person there, I felt compelled to address it.
And I appreciate that. I say thank you for doing it because it goes a long way. When someone says something to me, at least I can say, let me clarify.
Yes.
Or I can point them to minutes or something and say
Or,
this.
and like Brett, I joke, my face and my name, not only are they around town, they're on signs everywhere. It's not pretty easy to find. I mean, hey, go to the steakhouse. My phone number is on the beer glass.
I
And I
think
get more people calling me from that, but you can always reach out to any of us.
absolutely,
Thank you.
617
May I make a comment?
275
absolutely, Rick.
9916.
Rick McGuire, as you know, 11 Whitney Lane. I took the offer from Mr. Lobiser to have him come into our backyard, my backyard. And Pat Hurley was with me. We spent 2 hours with him in December, going through the properties, showing what we felt were some of the issues. We did show that, when he looks at his engineering designs and stuff, he's looking at water coming off the roof, water that's in the actual parking lots and over the garages. But the point we made with him is, in the past, that area behind us was a cranberry bog. And the Colonials did that because water was coming down the hill. What we impressed on him was the need to try and accommodate some of that water because it ends up flooding Main Street and ends up flooding School Street. So in those discussions, we went through and had a number of issues we brought up. One was not enough space between some of the wetlands. I think you have to have 50 feet space between the wetlands. At minimum, sometimes you get by with 25. Talked about all the water flowing down the hill. And he made some commitments to us. One of them was that he would not clear cut that land, number one. Number two, there are tall pine, deciduous, and hardwood trees on the border, maybe 50 to 70 feet tall. And we asked him not to cut those down, to save those, so it would be an acoustical barrier and a light barrier for the neighborhoods. And to accommodate some of this water that we know is back there. He also put in some additional stormwater drains ahead of his driveway coming in, and additional on the other side. He agreed to put a swale in between, right on the border of Whitney Lane. That's he agreed to. So he made a number of agreements that we were really happy that he took the time to walk the backyards to explain to him what the issues were. Another issue we had was he has a border wall that he's going to put up. We asked him if he would plant some trees, both hardwood and softwood trees, on the outside of that border, which was property. Why? To do something to hide some of the fence. Because what he was going to plant was all on the inside, which, I mean, that's fine. It's going to improve the look of the site, his apartment complex. So I did write up a note, which Michael was posted for me on the website for 40B, talked about that, some of the commitments that were made. I just want to make certain that we can get some of those conversations to our Centec on the zoning board, such that they hear and make certain that some of these issues that we talked about are actually implemented. How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, that conversation is more appropriate for tomorrow night.
Okay.
So bring those comments tomorrow night if you're planning on attending. As you were listing off the improvements, I was thinking to myself, just make sure that when, and they just submitted a revised site plan that's on the website now. So take a look at that site plan and ensure that those improvements that you just noted are on it. And then obviously express those same things, if you haven't already in an email version. I don't remember exactly. I looked at so many emails about them. But if you haven't already expressed it in an email that, again, always gets sent to the board, always posted online, so that not only does the board have it, the peer review engineer Stantec has it, and anybody else interested in the project, and all stakeholders have access to this information. Myself assisting the zoning board, as well as our consulting attorney, will over the next month, probably starting next, and maybe in April, we'll begin to start formulating the decision document that'll culminate at the end of this process. And that decision document will have a list, a very long list of all conditions, specifically like the ones you just noted. And so it will aim to include all of those comments, suggestions, noted improvements, and make sure that they are wrapped up into that decision, which is the legal document at the end of this process.
Just to comment on that, we did have a chance to talk to Mr. Loviser after that Board of Selectmen meeting, and talked about how the driveway in was so close to the property lines of 13, 15. He did come back in January, it was December, he did come back and revise that such that it moved it further away from the property line. So we appreciate that, and that's important. I just also want to bring one other thing to your attention, and that was that the fire department put in their comments. They were talking consistently about how this building is being marketed as a 4-story building. And just want to bring it to all of your attention. It is 4 stories on the west side of the building, which is facing Fisk. But if you look at what is on the east side of the building, it's 5 stories. And that may present some problems for the fire department, who has to go in there and address situations that may come up. So and if you look at that building and what we're trying to protect here in this area with the historical district and a colonial look with our churches and the historic district, this huge building of 5 stories is going to be looking down. And it's a beautiful building, it absolutely is. I've seen architecture and apartments, condos in Naples, Florida, that are of this ilk. It's beautiful, but it is a huge building that really belongs down in Franklin or around the Natick Mall. It doesn't fit with the colonial look that our revitalization effort has been pushing. And I would hope that some accommodate the neighbors, the town in general, that we can reduce this building such that it's on the west side is 3 stories and 4 stories on the back side. It will be less formidable to this town, and it will kind of keep the flavor and the feel of the town as a colonial town that's been here for hundreds of years. No, I don't know if that's possible, but I'd certainly like to be able to discuss it.
Well, in the beginning, he said it was only going to be 4 stories for 68 units, correct?
It's being marketed as a 4-story building. The fact is,
In the lower level?
the lower level in my backyard is 11 Whitney Lane. We're at 354 feet altitude above sea level. The front of the building is at right around 44. The backside's 32, so it's a 12-foot difference. On the bottom, because of the way it's done, what would be considered the basement, he's putting basement apartments in there. And then on that side of the building, it's 5 stories. And we have zoning in this town that says, wait a minute, guys, we have by variance a 3-story building, but you got to get it by variance. Now, I understand 40B, there's issues there because it's 40B. But when you have all these other regulations in town and you're putting up a building that's going to be of this size, it really will hurt the style and the architecture of this town. He can keep the building as a modern, ultra modern building because it's beautiful from the art sketch we've seen, but just reduce the height of this building so it doesn't stand out. I think you get the support of the town on that.
Is that how he's getting the 68 units, is by using that lower level?
Yes. from what we've seen in the drawings, but it is, if you look at the, I guess, the document that just came in from the fire department, they discussed that in detail. Because it's a concern to them, an ability to address an emergency situation, get to people appropriately and fast. So it's a concern. But yes, it's being called a 4-story building, but it's 5. He can have a 4-story building if there's 3 on the west side and 4 on the east side. It'd be a little less, but it creates less of a problem and image for the town if we're trying to keep, you know, the colonial look, colonial style of architecture that we're pushing for in slow revitalization.
It's worth noting, just because you brought it up, right? Like that was one of many concerns that we raised both in our conversations with him, and I'm guessing that was in the feedback and the comments that the board provided formally to them about the height of the building. So
I asked them
this-
then
this-
about the basement part.
board has very explicitly and on multiple occasions expressed the concerns that we have, that we've heard from folks, that we each have as individuals, and that we collectively have as a board. The building height was one of those concerns, and I'm not sure what, if anything, the town has in terms of leverage other than goodwill to influence Mr. Lobister's decision-making further. You know, he asked for our opinion, he asked for the feedback, he worked with us, he got all of our perspectives, and I don't see that he's changed the height of the building. I'm not sure that he's compelled to, other than out of the goodness of his heart. And I'm not sure that's how he's running. I'm not sure that's how anyone runs a business. So
I understand how he runs the business. That's no problem.
Yeah.
One of the things
so if anyone has ideas about how we might influence that process, great.
Well,
I just don't want residents to walk away feeling like there's more that the board could do that we're not doing somehow. If anyone knows of anything that we can do that we're not doing, we'd happily do it. It's tough because it's a state law, it's a state regulation. We only have so much flexibility. He's following the process. He's doing what he needs to do with the state. He's doing what he needs to do with the town. We're giving feedback. Like, that's the process. That's the program. Those are the laws and the regs. I don't know what else we can do.
What he told me was, and Pat Hurley was, his main objective is to come in here and be a good neighbor and his building, be a good neighbor. Because he wants to retain that for his own portfolio as something to move into retirement. And that's fine. But just in a comment to that statement, the city town of Holden right now has challenged the 40B rule. And they went to district court, they lost.
Not MBTA.
Well, there's a separate one there. I'll talk to that. They went, 4 months ago, challenged that in court. They lost, but they're preparing an appeal. Well, what they're asking is there any chance of winning? Who knows?
Well, that's
They're asking to change the law such that they would be in a situation where they would have a little bit more influence, not taking this away, because you know why 40B was put in place to make certain we build housing, and I think all of us are for that. The other thing is, there's a separate community that is, and I don't remember the name, last week and the week before announced that they're going to go to court on the MBTA multiple unit housing thing. So all I'm saying to you is there may be a change in some of the laws. But
Okay.
again, he wants to be a good neighbor.
I don't know how that's going to help us, but
We do have goodwill. We want to keep goodwill with him, and that's the point.
What is the height of the building, the 5 stories, roof and all?
Ms. McGuire explained it adequately. It's 4 stories on one.
Yeah,
side.
but foot wide,
So it's
how
around
much feet?
You probably know it just as well.
around 60 feet, maybe more, depending on, it's 60 feet to the top of the building. Then they're saying there's going to be.
Which side, on the west side or the?
West side. And then there's going to be, he's going to put his solar panels and other stuff above that. So there's potential.
Yeah, it was something like 55 or 60 feet. I'm obviously not looking at the plans right now, but that sounds.
And what's the zoning for building heights?
And that's 2.5 stories and 30 is 30. I forget if it's 30 or 35 as a maximum height in town. That's consistent, I believe, on all of our zones.
Right.
But just asking for your indulgence, be aware of what's going on. I would say in Whitney Lane and Hazeltine do support 40Bs. We just want to make certain that we have appropriate borders to the property, proper acoustic and illumination requirements. And, make this a successful project. But there's some things we asked for that he agreed to do. So we just want to make certain that gets to the overall. And thank you for your time.
Well, I just would like you all to keep us updated on what's going on. I mean, he goes to the neighborhood meetings. And it would be nice if the board knew what was going on at the neighborhood meeting so that we know what we're talking about when it comes to building heights and all these things he says he's gonna do. Well, we want to make sure that he doesn't.
Yeah, the other thing is, I know we had a meeting with a fellow from School Street. He made commitments there to trees, fencing, et cetera. But what were they? We don't know. And the other thing is, I know there's a fellow that's the Heritage. I think he's been complaining about the fact that the water drains into his yard and in the back, his lot is not usable. But the road's going right over top of the conduit drainage pipe that takes water down into his property. So somehow that's going to have to be accommodated also.
That I think we have to work with DOT, right?
That any touching anything with that culvert, that is requiring District 3 MassDOT's approval and especially review.
Did you call them, Michael? I know you said something you were gonna call DOT after you had gone out and looked at.
And I did, I reached out to them and let
They
them know.
rushed right out there, right?
Yes.
They actually did.
I don't, if they went out and looked at it, that was not conveyed to me, but they did respond to my inquiries and passing along the information as far as,
Yeah.
the concern. So I know one of the last emails I got back on it, they were asking whether or not they should go out there as the DOT and evaluate the status of the culvert and things like that.
Oh, I think they absolutely should.
I walked that property with Kevin McLaughlin, the resident who's been communicating with us, and sort of went through everything he was looking at and looked up the pipe and down the pipe. And he did mention that he was on a Zoom call with the folks from Mass DOT,
Good.
having
That's
a
good.
conversation about
That's
what
unusual,
was there. So
but that's good,
I think everybody's trying to be as accommodating as they can.
good.
But the point of the whole thing is, we just want to make certain that some of the inputs that were provided, that everyone knows what they were and they get incorporated into the design. It's easier to change the stuff on paper than it is after the fact, and it'll save us a lot, save the collective community a lot of money.
So
Lois are also.
will you bring the list with you tomorrow night so that everybody?
Yes, I'm gonna be there.
Record?
Well, along with safety concerns, one of the things that I brought out, was I think they have 109 parking spaces in 68 units. So it's
Which is
100-something spaces, and that includes required handicap, which is 1.5 spaces. They don't seem to have any visitor spaces. So what do they do during the snowstorm? People park, and if you come in late, where do you park? On 140? The driveway is too narrow to park and then have a plow come up. If someone parks in the wrong place, say they come and there's a big snowbank and they park in front of the snowbank, then you're not gonna get a fire truck through, you're not gonna get an ambulance through. They kind of dismissed it. What is their plan for snow and snow removal?
Do they have a traffic plan, do you?
Yeah, the traffic plan, absolutely, it's been peer reviewed. I don't know how much conversation the board wants to get into this, but I'll say quickly that my takeaway from the points that Martha just brought up, the applicant's response to those, snow will be removed from the site after storms, so not plowing into required spaces or needed spaces and then removed. And it was expressed, that's what they currently do at the 149 Main Street location. So that's something we'll certainly work into as a condition of the approval. So that's memorialized. The ratio of parking, it's my understanding and my experience that, and this was again, spoken to by their traffic engineers, Van Ness Associates, is that 1.5 spaces per unit is industry standard for not urban context multifamily, but specifically suburban and outer ring suburban multifamily. So, and that I believe it was also expressed that they have a similar parking ratio again at 149. So those are the answers that were provided to the ZBA.
At 149, we see if they push snow out of the way, or if someone came late and there were snowbanks and they didn't have a snow shovel, they could park against the snowbank somewhere and trucks and people could still get through. From what I've seen on the plan, they can't. It's a safety concern that is real. I think it's real, and you can't park on 140 during a snowstorm.
So have you seen them take away the snow? Just out of curiosity. I mean, I drive by usually. I don't think I've ever seen that being done. Like, I mean, do they come in with a 18-wheeler and load it up? Or?
Yeah, they fill a truck with it and then they bring it to a spot that they've rented. I've seen it done before at Shaw's.
I know at Shaw's. I'm saying at one key thing at the other location.
Yeah.
Of course, I've seen it done. I'm saying.
Well, that's some of the questions we can ask tomorrow night.
So tomorrow, can you, Michael, tell us exactly what we're going to be discussing? You say,
And traffic.
okay, so we're still talking about stormwater. Okay, good. Stormwater, okay. So
Okay.
you have some pictures of some stormwater in my backyard, which you can, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of water. I don't know if you can even look at it in my backyard.
There's a hill back there.
You know, that where the water's all draining. I'm just a little concerned, but you know, how we can be maybe putting up. And I'm
Where is
at the bottom of the hill. Right, I'm at the, I'm 25, so I'm at the bottom of the hill on Hazeltine, where all the water's draining to.
On, it's in Hazeltine on the top of the hill?
I'm at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. Not the cul-de-sac, yeah.
I thought Hazeltine was the hill. No,
Yeah, and it comes down, yeah, you know, at the bottom,
so you live on Hazeltine?
yeah.
The backyard of her house has
Yeah.
a full street.
Yeah.
And there are wetlands behind there.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
it runs from Whitney.
so you can see, you know, when it rains heavy, that's the amount of water in his backyard.
We're gonna try to have another community meeting, and if I can get the big room at the community center, figure out how to do that. I will invite you, because we had a limit on how many people we invited to the first, I said 28 or something, because more people wanted to.
That's
come.
my estate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Yeah, listening.
Thank
taking our input, and listening to us. We want to make certain we get our input in, because I think it will help him in the long run, and it's certainly easier to get the work done on the front end.
I think so too. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your input.
I did want to, although now I'm like, oh, my little window may have just closed and now it's like all of a sudden rehashing. I did want to sort of, like Laura, also identify comments that were in here were referencing the town manager, mainly because this is a perfect example of, as kids, the putting string between Dixie cups, where a recommendation on how to handle meetings comes across in the notes as directives from the town manager not to have Mr. Loberser speak. So as the board knows, because two of you went through the whole interview process and all that stuff for hiring me, I spent over 20 years as a town planner
And if there's anything that I strongly believe in is public discourse, transparency on all aspects of development. And when I saw the comments, I did give Kevin a call because I was pretty upset that the comments that he was captured as saying basically gave the impression that I did not support or even encourage public discourse or comment. And so I wanted to at least correct the record that I did not indicate that, and that there were instances, say at a ZBA meeting where, and this happens very often with developers, they'll ask, you know, how should they handle public hearings, public meetings? And for the ZBA, there's two courses that developers often take. Someone states a public comment, and then the developer spends 15, 20 minutes trying to respond to that comment. Then you go to the next, and it doesn't allow for a productive hearing process, and it doesn't allow them to find ways to address public comments. So I had recommended Kevin, why don't you listen to what everyone says as a public, so you can respond considerably and with thought with your consultants. It was clear from my conversation with Kevin that he had sort of consolidated recommendations into saying, well, town manager told me not to answer questions at the ZBA, but I think the whole conversation came out of context and is captured here. So similarly to Laura, wanted to make sure that people knew and the residents knew that I entirely support and had recommended meeting with neighbors to make sure that any concerns could be addressed. But public hearings need to have some sort of structure. Otherwise, they devolve and it's not constructive on either side. And I think he paraphrased rather inaccurately, and that's what's captured.
I'll just say that Mr. Lobisher did say, when I was setting up the meeting for the community, that he was told by you not to talk to the neighbors.
Which, yeah.
But I just want to say, it didn't come, it wasn't Kevin McLaughlin making it up. Mr. Lobisher definitely said that, and it wasn't limited to the ZBA meeting.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to correct, because he definitely had summarized our conversation incorrectly, because anyone would know that is something that I absolutely do not believe in, and my professional career is based on public interaction, transparency, and discourse, because that's the only way to get town business done. You can't do it behind closed doors. And the only way is to allow for communication. If he had said, because there was a planning board meeting that he dialed into, he had asked for recommendations on, well, should I address all the comments part of that? It's like you have, and this was, I think it was a week later, the ZBA had their first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ZBA hearing process. The planning board is just discussing comments. The chair will see that you're there. If the chair wants to include you, chair can include you. But this is the residents meeting with the planning board. It's not you as proponent. So to say a recommendation like, listen to what they say, bring it to the ZBA so you can actually listen and absorb the comments to hopefully address it. That's where the context, the intent can be totally taken out of context and basically say, you know what, Kevin, just keep your mouth shut. It's going to make it easier for everyone. It's where I think he took liberties in summarizing conversations that the opposite was intended as far as facilitating public discourse. So, and I hadn't, those notes were from beginning of December. That was the first opportunity to even see that. That wasn't in any other comments that were submitted to the planning board. So like Laura sort of debated as far as trying to correct the the record, because the last thing would want residents or any board member to think that did not believe wholeheartedly in public discourse and a transparent developmental process, not only through town meeting and budgets, but for construction projects. So,
Helpful, thank you.
Well, and I support, if things like this get said, bring it to the person's attention. That's the only way to get
Right.
things squared away.
Thank you.
Yes, Susan.
I will say that at the very first meeting that we came and spoke about this, you actually did say, I'm sorry, folks, but this is going to happen. That's what you said.
Yes.
And so that at the beginning, I felt it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
But it doesn't have to happen their way.
That's right, yeah. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid another construction company coming in and not listening to us at all. And another comment I have is that your face and body language say a lot. So maybe it's good for everybody to look in the mirror and maybe practice that, because sometimes words come out in facial displays.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
You give her a job and she take.
Oh, I know.
Another comment, and then the ZBA chair thought we were asking for too much. And basically.
It's not up to them to decide that you're asking too much.
But we haven't had any concessions, so. We didn't understand that.
Now, when you asked for certain things, was he amenable to that?
They made commitments to do things, yes.
Verbal.
Verbal.
Put them in writing.
Now waiting to see.
Yeah, and as you said, so we can only process.
But we'll.
Comes
I'll put a list.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, put a list together.
You said the end process, when we all participate in that, correct? The end process as far as having everything put in writing, right?
I mean, the pub.
Does it become part of the public record?
Yes, exactly. Everything that's being conducted right now through the zoning board is the public process, and the decision that will result of that is the public process. And so we'll do our best to incorporate any and all comments regarding the design that it will make it into that decision, I'm sure. But those conditions need to be acceptable to the board, the zoning board, because they're the ones that vote to approve that document.
Is the fire chief invited to this meeting tomorrow night?
Everyone is invited all the time. It's a public hearing. We are anticipating discussing fire at the next
Oh,
hearing,
okay.
not this one.
The safety is a big thing.
Yeah.
Setting aside time in the February, the March meeting for civil engineering beyond just stormwater, and specifically including with that fire comments.
All right, thank you, Michael. That,
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
see you tomorrow night.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Right.
See you, Michael. Do we have an executive session?
we do, and I can give you an update, but
Well, I move that the select board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, HR director, executive assistant, and to adjourn the meeting directly from executive session. Roll call vote.
Laura had aye.
Brett Simus,
Oh,
aye.
I have to second, sorry, blew that one.
Brett Simus, aye.
Maureen Dwinell, aye, unanimous action.